Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to invite all of you and welcome all of you to this first international webinar of the International Society for Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgeons Research Wing webinar on importance of medical ethics in scientific publications. We have an eminent panel of speakers with us, and I invite from the ISMSICS, Dr. Sahu, Dr. Boramani, Dr. Gogate, Dr. Bhattacharya, Dr. Joshi, Dr. Satanshu Mathur, and Dr. Heda. It gives me great pleasure to present to you our guest of honor for the day, Dr. Barun Nayak, the venerated ex-editor of the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, and, so to say, the father of Indian research methods in Indian ophthalmology. It also gives me great pleasure to present our international speaker, Dr. Pamela Gonzalez, Dr. Sangeeta Abrol, Dr. Sanjay Mahandale, and our moderator for the day, Dr. Rajwinder Bhattal. With the permission of the chair, I would request the permission to set the ball rolling. Dr. Boramani, Dr. Nayak, please, sir.
Yeah, please proceed.
Dr. Nayak, do we have your permission, sir?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. I think we should not waste time and straight away start with the
I think we can start with the share screen. So, Dr. Rajwinder Kaur, well, this is our first international webinar of the research wing of the ISMSICS, and our moderator for the evening is Dr. Rajwinder Kaur. She is a professor at Bhatinda in Punjab, and she's also the managing editor of the Adesh Journal in the Adesh University. She is an executive member of the Ophthalmology Society of Punjab, as well as the Women's Ophthalmology Society, and she is very active in research publications. Over to you, Dr. Rajwinder.
It's my great pleasure to introduce our International Society of Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgery surgeons. So here, the Dr. Amulya Sahu, who is the founder chairman of the society. Dr. Jagannath Boramani, he is the executive chairman of International Society of Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgeons, among the finest ophthalmologists in the city. Dr. Jagatman Boramani in Mumbai is known for offering excellent patient care. He has contributed exceptionally in bringing in a change in manual small incision cataract surgery technique and designed the X chopper for cataract surgery with us. Dr. Prakshit Gogate, he is the vice chairman of the society, and Dr. Satanshu Mathur, he is the national coordinator for the society. Dr. Bhattacharya is the president of the society in the year 2019 to 22. And Dr. Srinivasan Joshi is the secretary of the society. And Dr. Aarti Heda is the national coordinator of the society. Now we have Dr. Jatinder Bali. He is the former member secretary of the research committee of the International Society of Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgeons. Cataract surgeons with interest in retina, pediatric ophthalmology and research, and has been the chairman and subcommittee of the Information Technology, Practice Automation, and the Clinical Information and Systems of DOS, Delhi Ophthalmological Society. Completed his MBA in Operation Research and is the author of the bestseller research book, Basics of Biostats. Now the guest of honor. Dr. Barun Kumar Nayak is the head of the Department of Ophthalmology at PD Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai. He was the vice president of Maharashtra Ophthalmological Society and has been the past editor for Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. He is currently the president of AIOS and editor of JCOR. We have the eminent speakers from all over the world. So now we can start with the presentation, with your permission.
Yes. Start with the presentation. Yeah. So introduce.
We have Dr. Pamela is going to go up first.
Yes, sir. So Dr. Pamela Gonzalez, she is an anterior segment ophthalmic surgeon. She has done anterior segment fellowships at the Institute Mexican and master degree in bioethics. The member of the Mexican Society of Ophthalmology. She is a certified member for the Mexican Council of Ophthalmology. She is a senior surgeon at the anterior segment and cornea department at the Institute Mexican de Ophthalmología, IAP. She is the member of the Mexican chapter of the society and certified simulation basic training instructor for Help Me See. She has host of the level 2 MISCS training program of C International, volunteer faculty for Orbis International. She will speak on the pillars of medical ethics. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I want to thank Dr. Jatinder Bali for his invitation and ISMSICS for always giving and endorsing these educational webinars, which are like really good for everybody. So I can start sharing my screen?
Please do, ma'am.
Okay. So I know we have a really interesting programs about ethics and bioethics and research and the relation in between. So I'm going to talk a little bit these minutes about the pillars of medical ethics. So what is ethics? Ethics is a branch of philosophy that involves systematizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right or wrong behavior. But it all depends where you're looking for the definition. You can find different definitions in different parts of literature, but I think a really important concept about ethics is a branch of philosophy, and most of the time, a lot of time, is used as synonym of morality. Ethics seeks to resolve questions of human morality by defining concepts such as good, evil, right, wrong, virtue, or vice. So let's look into a little bit about the word and its roots. The word ethics is derived from the ancient Greek with its ethikos, meaning relating to one's character, which itself comes from ethos, meaning character and moral nature. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of time is used as a synonym of morality. So as we said, we do have one word, but we have like several meanings in between. The science of the ideal human character, of the science of moral duty. So now we have a very good idea what ethics is about. Ethics is about character, ethics is about morality, ethics is about behavior and not just judging behavior. It will be like about guiding behavior to a good standard. So like, for example, in the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy states that the word ethics is usually or commonly interchangeable with morality, as we've been saying. So how all of this branch of philosophy relates with medicine? Well, I think we are all really familiarized with this concept, bioethics. And I think this is the actual clue. This is where all becomes related. And this is where us as doctors or the medical part come related with ethics. So bioethics appeared as a new discipline in the early 1970s. And it was led by a little group of American theologians, philosophers, and physicians. They were the ones that started this movement, but a lot of people from all around the world rapidly come on board. And they were the constituents of the first generations of bioethics. But as we said, they were not the only ones. They were the starters, but a lot of people come and make a lot of contributions related to bioethics. So the term bioethics, bios, life, ethos, behavior, was coined in 1927 by Fritz Jarr in an article about bioethical imperative regarding the use of animals, plants, and scientific research. So bioethics involves a lot of different disciplines, not only medicine. There are a lot of different disciplines involved in this. We also have law involved in this. We have a lot of human social disciplines involved and taking into account for bioethics. And I think this is more common for all of us that in 1970, the American biochemist Byron Porter, known as a lot of people like one of the father of bioethics, used the term to describe the relationship between the biosphere and growing of human population. Porter's work led to the foundation of global ethics, a discipline centered around between biology, ecology, medicine, and human values. So as we said, bioethics, if we want to see it in one way, bioethics will be like the bridge between ethics and a lot of different disciplines and the way they come related in between. So how did it all started? Well, in the beginning, many centuries ago, we know medicine has been one of the most ancient disciplines. And in the beginning, the goal was to help or to cure. That was the only aim or the only objective of the first doctors, even though they were not called doctors at the beginning. They just wanted to help others, to bring some cure or relieve the evil or the disease they had. And that's how it all started, by tradition, by inheriting different traditions that help others to find a cure. But this was a really important step, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about during this webinar. Claude Bernard in 1852 was the father of experimental medicine and the research method. So before this date, everything was like on goodwill and like on discovering by accident. But in 1852, he said, we have to state a way of how making all this knowledge objective. And he's the one that established the research method, which we know was a huge difference in research and obviously in medicine. I think there is no explanation needed for this photograph because we know a lot of advances started, a lot of different studies with patients were taken into account. But sadly, a lot of abuses were done, obviously. So sadly, a lot of things around the world are done after abuses are committed. So it is the same with bioethics. When some abuses, because of the knowledge, because of the advances, because of the different drugs that were coming into the market that back then, they started abusing from the patients, and it all took like this to relate it. And this article in 1966 by Henry Beecher was one of the state markers or stakeholders. Why? Because this article put into the light in a lot of different abuses that were made in different communities, in different universities, and he said, we can't keep on doing this. A lot of reports came on that base, and we are all familiarized with this report, the Belmont reports. So the Belmont report is one of the stakeholders. This report is the one that actually talks about the ethical principles and guidelines of protection of human subjects for research. So even though we're not just talking about research, this is one of the markers that is gonna lead us in a way or in our behavior as doctors, as researchers, and in our relation with patients. So we can remember the principles of the Belmont report: beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and autonomy. There are a lot of different ways for saying or for referring to these principles. In some literature, you will find like respect for persons. In some other literature, you will find as informed consent, but these are all the bases. What do they mean? Well, they mean that in our behavior as doctors, in our behavior as research, we have to look for making good. We have to avoid making evil or bad. We have to look for justice for our patients, for justice for the researchers, for justice for the ecology or all the media all around. And we have to look for or respect people, respect autonomy. And this is where a very important part of informed consent comes into the life. So in all these days, a lot of different scientific production came around this bioethics new discipline. And we have a lot of different things going on that we can see here on the list. In 1947, the Nuremberg Code was the first one to come into life and is recognized as one of the historic codes that gave birth to bioethics. Afterwards, the Helsinki Declaration in 1964, and afterwards a lot of different states that came into the world, but all of them looking for the best relation with the doctor, patient, the research, but of course, all of them respecting the 4 principles or the development principles. So what does this translate for us? The translation for us as doctors, for all that we've been talking about, is that doctor-patient relationship. It's a really important thing. Remember, we as doctors are in a power position relating with a vulnerable position from our patient. Our patients are in a vulnerable position because most of the time they have an illness. They are looking for us, looking for a specific answer. And there's something really important in between. There is hope. Whenever the patient approaches to a doctor, they have the hope that the doctor can have the answer for him. And they're putting all these hopes and all this goodwill on the doctor, trying to find the answer. So that's why we as doctors have to be like really aware of our behavior related with ethics, with bioethics, looking always for the best being of our patients. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. It was a beautiful presentation, and you've actually made the pillars extremely clear. There was always a debate about the 4 pillars, the 6 pillars, the 7 pillars, the 10 pillars, or the 13 pillars. So I think we can probably take the questions right at the end with permission of the chair. So if we could at the end, if we could.
Yeah, we'll take it at the end.
Right, sir. So we could go to the next speaker then.
Our next speaker is Dr. Sangeeta Brol. She is a professor and consultant at Vardhaman Mahavir Medical College at Safdarjung Hospital, New Delhi, and also the Deputy Director, General Health Services. She is the head of glaucoma services, and she has Masters in Public Health from the London School of Health and Tropical Medicine. She has been facilitated by WAS as a leading woman and inspiring woman in ophthalmology in her passion. And her goal is prevention of blindness. She will speak on research integrity, a primer. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajvinder, for your kind introduction. At the very outset, I actually compliment International Society for Small Incision Cataract Surgery Manual for integrating this as well as a part of the whole process. And thanks to Dr. Bali and the whole team and Dr. Barun, we always look up to you. So the topic that I shall be covering is research integrity, a primer. This is very, very I'm very passionate about this topic for the simple reason that
is it not moving, ma'am?
Yes. So this why
now it's moving.
Why do we talk about research integrity in the very first place? So is it only about the confidence and trust in the qualitative or the quantitative methods that we are using as tools? It's, I think, all about scientific integrity of conducted research. Additionally, it is also about professional integrity of the researcher himself. I especially quote this because Edinburgh Research Office, I learned many things while working there. And we should prime ourselves to the change that's happening in research methods. So if I was to highlight a few things that are expected when we talk about integrity, it is verifiable and reproducible results in proposing, performing, as well as evaluating. All the three steps. You have to be totally honest with your data collection. This is still possible, this is still happening, but then somewhere we lack the adherence to the regulations that we build, to the institution, to the country, to the place we belong to. And believe me when I say that there are standard operating protocols for most of the things, but somewhere professional codes or norms are not followed. I would still vouch for efficiency and objectivity when it comes to research that we see around us. But when it comes to accuracy and the ultimate data collection, I still feel there is a lot that needs to be honestly put across. Why I say this, a dear friend of mine the other day told me that Lancet had published an article in which Alzheimer's disease was related with amyloidosis. Believe me, for years together, money was spent in searching for the correlation, and after 15 years, Lancet has issued an apology that this was a fabricated result. So how much harm do you do to the society by just a dishonest fabrication? It cannot be weighed out. So it becomes a matter of our responsibility to ensure that the values are transmitted through ethical scientific conduct throughout our procedure, throughout our mentorship, and throughout our peer-reviewed work. So what makes research ethical? Dr. Pamela was very clear when she said, I really admire, because it correlated with what I am about to say. It's about social and scientific value, yes, but it's also about weighing out a risk-benefit ratio in the amount of funding you are taking from the institution, or if the amount of risk you are putting the participants to. We have to weigh it out. This was so evident in the vaccine trials that were happening. So, and also the potential enrolled subjects, the respect for them, how well explained they are. Today, we are proud in India because our vaccine has stood the test of time. All of us have gone through recent reports where the complications of some vaccines in USA were not highlighted. I shall not mention the details here, but we know that. So research integrity affects you, me, public, and it affects all the society. So here are some of the reasons I would still say. I have actually cited this example because I was annoyed as well as surprised that you harm the public. It's not only about scientific progress, but you harm the public by creating and not being responsible researcher. Now, this was about the background. Why? So how do we go about it? So the guidance on responsible research conduct, there could be some general guidance, and there could be ones embedded in the research phases per se. So if you are a peer reviewer, if you have a conflict of interest, and I am very, very, very fond of collaborative research because I learned how collaborative research, how multi-center research, they have the genuineness of the data. They are automatically peer reviewed, and somebody's critiquing you all the time, and also they need less of funding. So these things should be encouraged. Secondly, if it's about research phases, then as I said, dissemination of data, the data has to be finally in the public domain. This I stand by for any work being done, because it's funded by somebody. So it has to be published and it has to be available to a common person. So what can exactly be done? Having said all this, what can be done to promote research integrity in our day-to-day life? If I am in an institution, if I am working and I am a mentor or I'm a peer reviewer, what exactly can I do? So I've divided it into each responsibility, because then it adds to our pre-existing behavior of our attempt to do our best. So as researcher, of course, stick to the scientific rigor, whatever it be. If you have to do a qualitative research, then don't hide behind for not taking a focus interview or something, not teaching your group, the participant group, enough for them to be prepared for and be truthful about this. So these things make a difference as a researcher. But if the more responsibility is when you're actually mentoring, when you actually have people you are teaching, and this is the future generation that will make a difference. Because if I dare say this, in India, lot of good work is being done. Somewhere, if we are behind, it is because we do not create enough evidence on paper. I have realized, and we are trying to, each of us has to compensate that and get to perfection. That's why these meetings I really appreciate, because these make a lot of difference. So set a good example for your mentees, and don't be afraid in correcting any aberrant behavior, because then it doesn't become a habit. So let me multiply the data. No. So then if you're a junior researcher, it's imperative for you to understand the policy of the institution you are working in. If my institution does not encourage RCT, now it does. But if it does not, or if it does not like comparative drug trials, the junior researcher should be aware of the limitations. He can reason why, but he should be. And then as scientific administrators, now this is a big responsibility most of us here are actually on. That if you have somebody who is ready to do good research, provide education. This is what we are actually doing right now. Support the researcher to promote responsible conduct of research. So this is important. So establishing transparent procedures for receiving and investigating scientific misconduct is equally important for a science administrator, so that nobody gets on the wrong foot. And what do you do if you're just a member of public? If it's not my specialty, what do you do? Demand accountability. Somebody must have done that over years. That's why the Lancet had to apologize. So this is a very busy sheet, but I will just put it in 3 simple words. What is it says on the research institutions on the left side, and the responsibility of the funding institutions on the right side. So 3 simple words are: protect against research bias. Anytime, small research, small group, bigger group, how do you protect from any kind of bias? You have different methods to do that, but we have to make it a habit. And the second thing I would say is training and documentation. The earlier we grasp and learn and make it a habit, documentation training of data collection is one thing that can change the whole scenario of research. And the third thing I would say is collaborative team science. That's what I feel. Team science, these are times when teamwork, team science, because anything, if we are sitting here and we are talking across the globe so easily, so why not team science? They're embedded in our systems for better research. So this Pamela has covered very well. I will not raise this issue any further, but even if it's an environmental issue, even if you are anonymizing the data, it does require ethical approvals, prior ethical approvals. So it protects the researcher as much as it protects the person on the other side. And one good thing about having gone through the ethical procedures, I have realized, is in an institution, even if you did a small study, very small study, and you have prior ethical approvals and you want a bigger platform, you have the funding bodies, the sponsors, Department of Science and Technology, all these institutions will stand with you in good stead if your ethical approval of the committee was well done. This is amongst the last slides. So 3 things: fabrication. Yes, we work hard, all of us, to avoid any fabrication, as I just mentioned, amyloid and Alzheimer's. But falsification of data is equally a culprit. Third thing is plagiarism. Now one can be taught through plagiarism why somebody's words can cause plagiarism, even if it's a thought that you think is very important to convey. So there are tools for that. And I per se use Grammarly or Quillbot, Turnitin. All these are very, very good tools. If the data is less than 20%, then you are in good hands for having avoided plagiarism per se. So this is a last summary slide. So how to bring about that change? Second last actually, how to bring about that change is by embedding ethics module at the MBBS level, and the teachings per se should be scientific. Everything should be inculcated at a primary teaching level, and research group leaders and supervisors must do mentorship and training to career researchers. When they're doing the study design, that's the time you can give them enough idea of what, why, and why this one, and why should you not choose the other one. So this becomes a habit. And then how I see the change in the future, because I work in an institution where we go through so many people who are doing regional research. I see easy paperwork for RCT approvals, randomized controlled trials in the future. Our institution has really worked on it. Then systematic reviews are much easier if we really get good hands-on on Mendeley and Zotero, because now I'm able to do good systematic reviews only if in the last few years I know how to collect all the data there. And then this thing I think all of us should try is teach early essay writing with citations, references, bibliography and let it become a habit in the early teaching phase with relevant references. So this says it all. When you do a good research, you leave a trail behind, which leaves and encourages further research. You are leaving good footprints on the sands of time. These are additional resources, and this was a topic. Thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Very well and very well explained, very lucid presentation. Actually, this came up so hard. If you remember February 2020, the Peter Daszak, we've all had all these episodes which stimulated so much discussion on integrity in research. And then, of course, if we go further back, there has been the story of the Piltdown man. But probably, we will discuss more on it right at the end once we are done with the presentations. Maybe we can go on to the next speaker.
So our next speaker is Dr. Varun Kumar Naik. We always look up to sir for guidance regarding the publications and how to do pure research. And he will speak on ethics and misconduct in research and publication. Over to you, sir.
Can you see my screen?
Not as yet, sir.
No.
Can you see my screen?
No.
We cannot, sir.
Okay. Just a minute. I'll quickly, share again. Yes, now you can see my screen.
Now we got it, sir.
Yeah, okay. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on wherever you are logged in. And so what I'm going to talk about today is, I know there will be some repetitions and some overlap between the different topics. So my topic is ethics and misconduct in research and publication. Her definition of ethics, I think Dr. Pamela really explained in such a lucid manner. So it is just a set of moral principles, and its motivation based on ideas of right and wrong. But it is only thing is that there is no definition what is right and what is wrong. So it's all to some extent also becomes a perception and the personal feeling as well. But these days, why do we break ethical rules? That we all know that publish and perish. So because if we publish, we have to survive. For that, we have to publish. But if we break the ethical rules, we may be perished. So one thing we should understand, international scientific ethics have evolved over centuries and are commonly held throughout the world. And scientific ethics are not considered to have national variants or characteristics. There is a single ethical standard for science. The ethics problems with scientific articles are on the rise worldwide due to pressure of publish or perish. But we should also be careful that these days it can be detected very easily due to the electronic era. And the first time when I became editor, the moment our journal was put back issues, I started putting on websites, on our website. Within a week, I got a complaint about plagiarism by the author, and 2 days later, the editor of that journal again sent me another complaint that this article has been plagiarized, and actually it was absolutely plagiarized. Later on, we did a lot of research, and then ultimately we withdrew that article, retracted the article, even published a editorial on that on that issue. So ethical issues are also, it's all involving researchers, which you have heard a lot about it just now by the two speakers, the authors, reviewers, editors, and publishers. So it's all stages of research and publication. The ethics are important, and it is an important aspect. Now, the ethical responsibility of a scientist, just now you heard about the honesty, which according to me, honesty is the most important thing, because anywhere if you deviate from this, then the other things will definitely creep in. So, and objectivity and justice. So these are sometimes, because you have to always remember honesty, honesty, and honesty. If you forget that, then all those unethical things will creep in. Now, the researcher's ethical issues, that this also, it was duplication of data, data manipulation, which Sangeeta told about, falsification, fabrication, and in the analysis, you analyze in some different way, because you see, statisticians or statistics is such a science that two different conclusions can be drawn based on the same set of data. So there you have to be really, again, honest in analysis, whatever you are putting it in front of the whole world. The conflict of interest has to be seen everywhere, that has to be considered everywhere. Then IRB approval, these days at least there is a check, because if you really stick to the principles of IRB and approval, then a lot of ethical issues can be checked at that time in the beginning stage itself. Then human use concerns, animal use concerns, and tenets of Helsinki Declaration. One thing which really irritates me, every article, everyone, say whoever submits in the journal, they will write tenets of Helsinki Declaration was adhered to. But I doubt and I challenge 90% of those who write this, if I ask them, tell me what are the tenets of Helsinki Declaration, probably they will not be able to tell anything about it, except these two words. And just now Sangeeta also told about that it should come, whenever you have done a research, it should come to public domain. So not to publish is again unethical, because because the advancement of science depends on the publication of research and the data. So, and participants have given permission for altruism. They are not gaining anything. So for altruism, they have given permission. So we should not basically deceive them. It also leads to wastage of resources in the form of time and money if you don't publish. The misconduct, the definition wise, I was trying to locate the deliberate violation of a law or a standard set especially by a government. So the various misconduct which comes in the publication, which right now, because my main thing was the publication, is the authorship, where we know that ICMJ has criteria for the to be included in the author's authorship. And these things must have worked for conception and design or acquisition or analysis of data, must have helped in drafting or critical revision of the manuscript, and must have approved the final revision of manuscript to be published. But again, my experience is it's hardly ever adhered to, because you can make out with the conduct of the and the progress of the manuscript that sometimes the articles is, if it is accepted, then they just send, can we include our head of department's name in the authorship? If it was, then why didn't you, if he was qualified for to be included, then why did you neglect him in the beginning or omitted in the beginning to begin with? So that's why, and in the literature, there are various interesting terminologies which have been given for authorship, which is not correct, which is not proper. The guest, gift, and ghost authors, honorary authorship, pseudo authorship, surprise authorship, and polyauthorosis giftosa. One of the article which probably is, I saw there was 117 or 118 authors involved in that. And it was not a multicentric trial, just remember that. The author's misconduct also, partly it was covered, but this includes plagiarism, which also we forget self-plagiarism. That from my previous article, if I take something, then that also constitutes plagiarism, if I take in toto. Redundant publication, duplicate publication, then undue pressure on editors, because even because I receive a lot of undue pressure from the authors is in different ways, so that their article should be accepted. And failure to disclose conflict of interest, and especially the financial. So these are all the author's misconduct. Then what actions that can be taken in case of misconduct? Then editors, basically editors must investigate, but unfortunately, we don't have resources as editor. Most of the editors, we don't have resources, especially the society journals. Means we write to authors to explain, difficult to contact, no response from the authors. Then they start denying if you are able to contact, if you are lucky, then lame excuses. And but finally, then sometimes we also appoint subcommittees, but subcommittees also, sometimes they see who are the persons involved, and based on that they give their verdict. So those things are really not correct, and limitations from the editor's point of view. And common response from the authors, that plagiarism or duplicate publication, then 4 phases. Silence. First, they go in silence phase, then denial. In case if we are able to contact, then they try to evade afterward, and finally they start rationalizing. But the phase of acceptance never comes. And common response from authors, duplicate or redundant publication. We did not read the instructions, but that is not the excuse. We wanted to reach a different audience. Our failure to cross-reference the article was a simple oversight. We perceived the overlap to be much less than the reviewer editor thinks. We now see that we broke the rules, but it was never our intent. Everything is funny. Now, editor's dilemma: how far to push with limited resources? What is the authority that we have? Editor cannot make friends, but can make enemies fast. Because if you have accepted 5 articles in past, and once you have just sometimes commented on these misconduct, then you become enemies. Editor has to think of his own future also, sometimes for different reasons. And punishment, these are the various punishment which is based on the Pope. And finally, in this, one should remember that otherwise, the first one is very simple one, letter of explanation and education to the authors, where there appears to be a genuine misconduct of principles. But gradually it starts becoming severe. And finally, they're reporting the case to the General Medical Council or the other such authority or organization which can investigate and act with due process. So they should remember. Reverse misconduct also is important. Timely reviews, secrecy should do it themselves. Conflict of interest and bias, all are reverse misconduct. Editor's misconduct also, they should remain unbiased. Time consideration, conflict of interest, should initiate action if fraud is suspected. redressal of complaints and advertisement ethics also, because sometimes advertisements are made with some different purpose, for some different purpose. Usually redressal is done by editors, but some journals have even ombudsman. And conflict of authors, reviewers, editors should be disclosed, financial should be disclosed, and other conflict of interest, editors takes decision. Now the deadly sin, unethical behavior can earn rejection and even a ban from publishing in the journal. And these are the common ethical issues, the 7 deadly sins, which already most of them I have covered earlier. So thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's always a pleasure to hear you. And actually, it sounds like a very dangerous job to be doing, the editor's job, sir.
Yes, very, very thankless.
I think, sir, for paucity of time, we'll move to the next speaker, and then we'll come back for an interactive discussion on the topics, on the issues that have been raised.
So our next speaker is Dr. Sanjay. He is the research director of Hinduja Hospital and Medical Research Center, and he is the additional director general and scientist in ICMR institution and scientific and administrative leadership to the ICMR network of institutions, career development of scientists. He has been working with the networking and collaborations, national and international coordination with the ministries of Government of India, and participating in high-level meetings for policy development and consultation to the national programs. Over to you, sir.
You'll have to unmute yourself. So you're muted. We're not able to hear you.
I think I need permission to share my slides.
Yes, sir.
Kushagra,
Okay.
please do.
So you can share.
Thank you. I hope the slide is visible.
It is visible, sir.
I'm audible. Thank you so much. So thank you for this opportunity to talk on essentials of institutional ethics committees. So, and I think I'm just going to talk about primarily 2 Indian regulations which govern this particular aspect to a large extent. But I'm pretty sure that we have a international audience here today. And so we have to be aware that there are international rules and regulations which exist in the respective countries, which we have to essentially be respectful about. So in India, as all of us know, lots of things started happening around 2015, and the whole clinical trials scenario changed. There was a period in which actually the clinical trials came to a standstill to a large extent because a lot of regulatory reforms were happening at that time. And there was lack of clarity. Some of the overseas funding agencies suddenly found that India is not a good place to do clinical trials on. But as the picture started becoming clear with the formation of these new drugs and clinical trials rules, which came into existence and were effected from 19th March 2019, I think the picture became very clear, and we are gradually coming back to where we were some time back. And so taking that as the basic framework, let me just take you through what are the challenges and what are the expectations as far as the constitution of ethics committees are concerned. As all of us know, for good research to happen, it is absolutely important that it has to be approved by an appropriately constituted ethics committee. We all know that biomedical research must follow the national and international ethics guidelines. It is also important to know that many countries have formulated their own guidelines, as we have formulated our own guidelines in India. The Indian Council of Medical Research has come up with the guidelines for ethical guidelines for biomedical research, a document which has been revised several times, as the latest one was during the COVID pandemic as well. So what is important is that these standards must be followed. That's an important thing, but I would like to assure everyone that the Indian national standards are definitely not less exacting, and the Indian ethics guidelines are considered on par with those of the international guidelines as well. So this, what was the need for these new drugs and clinical trial rules? firstly, I would like to say that we have all heard that clinical trials in India were governed primarily by the Schedule Y of Drugs and Cosmetic Rules, which were published in 1945, and they were considered as sacrosanct until this new rules came in, which were called as New Drugs and Clinical Trial Rules 2019, as I said. So this brought in a lot of changes which are expected to help and facilitate conduct of clinical research and trials done in a much improved regulatory and ethical environment in India. And that was primarily the goal, why it took some time for all these rules to be formulated. But the way the job has been done, it's really commendable. This particular rule, NDCT 2019, that talks about the constitution, role, and functions of ethics committees very clearly. It defines them. What was construed earlier was that more and more responsibility was entrusted to the ethics committee. So there was a phase, committees to improve the standards of research in the country. Actually, there came a phase when it was felt that a lot of job which the researchers are supposed to handle were handed over to the ethics committees. So there was some misunderstanding. There was a point in which many ethics committees people started walking out of the committees because all of them felt pressurized and because of this extra responsibility which came their way. But gradually people have settled down in their roles now in various committees. For all practical purposes, the audience here must know that any kind of ethics committee that actually reviews and approves the clinical trials as well as bioavailability and bioequivalence studies have to be registered with the Office of the Drug Controller General of India, which is under the CDSCO, which is the Standards, Drugs and Control Standards Organization, central organization. And what has been advised is there should be a minimum of 7 members with a background from the medical sciences, non-medical sciences, as well as scientific and non-scientific areas. And what was earlier happening is mostly the institutes were constituting committees from their own staff. But now this definitely has to be governed by the recommendations of the rule, which states that there has to be one lay person, essentially with non-science background, one woman member at least, one legal expert, and an independent member from any other research related field like social science or the representative of a non-governmental organization or a social work agency or a philosopher, ethicist, theologian, etc. Plus, there should be medical persons, preferably with postgraduate degree. Then the member secretary should come from within the institution, but the chairperson has to come from has to be a non-institutional member. There are certain committees who still do not follow this, but it is important that it has to be done. And it is expected that at least the 50% of the members of the ethics committee should not be affiliated with the institution. It has also been recommended that there should be an expert panel of specialists, because it's quite possible that the membership of the ethics committee may not necessarily have the required expertise to review all the processes, all the projects there. And then it is advisable to have the external experts brought in, who are enlisted in the panel earlier. But we have to understand that these external panel members do not have the voting rights. One of the important points which has been recently stressed is about the training of ethics committees. Earlier, it was not stressed at all. But now what is important is when the members join the ethics committees, they have to be trained in basic research methodologies. They have to be trained in the national ethics guidelines for biomedicals and health research. They have to be trained in good clinical practice. And then periodically also, it is expected that these ethics committees are trained, ethics committee members are trained in a variety of ways. For example, when our committee in Hinduja Hospital started receiving some projects in the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning in our hospital, then our chairperson decided to give a talk for the members on machine learning and artificial intelligence. Also, one expert was invited to talk about this. So this is a way through a training program. So any person who has not completed the training can actually be disqualified from the committee as a member. The medical scientists and clinicians must possess at least postgraduate qualification. That's the expectation as far as the committee membership is concerned. Conflict of interest is also now being stressed in a great way. Now, every time, every member now, a new member is inducted into the committee, not only at the time of entry in the committee, declaration is taken about the conflict of interest, but when actually various projects are declared, even then the conflict of interest has to be declared. This becomes particularly important for the members who are internal, because some of them might be actually the investigators on the project and have the scientific conflict of interest. There might be financial interest in some of the, say, maybe drug companies. People might have shares, for example. There could be personal interests, like, for example, a person who is a member of the ethics committee, his spouse may be one of the investigators who has submitted a research protocol. And these are the real life examples which I have given you, which kind of conflict of interest exists, but it has to be declared for every project, and a person has to step out of the meeting when this particular project is getting discussed, and he or she will not have a right to vote as far as the approval is concerned. We all know that ethics committee has had always some responsibilities defined, but now that those responsibilities have been further increased. So as all of us know, we were supposed to do the initial review and as ethics committee members and approve the projects. But now we are also supposed to provide ongoing reviews. We have to also review their 6-monthly periodic project reports which the investigators submit. In addition, the protocol amendments or that are submitted have to be reviewed. The protocol deviations as they happen have to be reviewed, and then appropriate action has to be recommended. Then even monitoring, as all of us know, most of the clinical research is monitored by the sponsor appointed monitors or external agencies like CROs. But now the new rules require that even the institutional ethics committee has to be involved in the monitoring of this particular project. More critical role comes in now as far as the serious adverse event reporting is concerned, where within 24 hours, the reporting has to be done by the investigators to the ethics committee. And so the ethics committee has to form a subcommittee which has enough expertise to actually look at the serious adverse event, suggest what additional actions are required to be taken, ensure that the final report of closure has been submitted, and then ensure that appropriate compensation is given. Not only that, the required management for the that particular year. While the new drugs are being introduced, if the investigator says that he would like to have a post-trial access to certain drugs, for particularly for some rare drug conditions, then along with the Central Drug Authority of India, the Institutional Ethics Committee is empowered to give permission for post-trial access to the drugs for a period which is found essential by the investigator, and that is to be given free of cost. So the IEC also ensures compliance of investigators and sponsors to registration in the Clinical Trials Registry of India, Health Ministry Screening Committee, where there are international collaborations. As I just mentioned, the post-trial access to IND drugs also. So this is the second part, which I'm not going to go into greater details, but just to sensitize to you that in addition to the clinical drugs and NDCT, National Drugs and Clinical Trial Rules, there is also National Accreditation Board for Hospital and Healthcare Providers. All of us know it as NABH, and they have also given the guidance for that. And so there is a guidance for formation of ethics committee, which clearly says that the administrative head of the institution must constitute that particular committee, must give a letter of appointment, also to be, say, accompanied by the roles and responsibilities that they have very clearly listed out right in the beginning itself, and the conflict of interest also. Not only that, the administrative support for resources, manpower, and storage, it was mentioned in the earlier presentations, but storage or archival of documents of clinical research is emerging as an important aspect, even though many electronic say sort of platforms are being used to store data. There is in Indian regulations still require paper storage of clinical trials in particular. And so they do require a lot of funding for adequate storage in a proper condition. Then there has to be a policy to ensure independence of this ethics committee. So the hospital authorities should not meddle with the ethics committee and try to influence that. It's important. Then they should essentially stick to the current available guidelines, like in India, the NDCT rules I talked about, ICMR ethics guidelines for ethical conduct of biomedical research in 2017, and then now we have the ones for COVID pandemic, which recently came up in 2020, in addition to the good clinical practices as well. So ethics committee composition, this was earlier mentioned, so I'm not going to repeat this. Basically, what it talks about is NABH recommendation also is finely aligned to the new drugs and clinical trial rules. The experts panel, all of us have to understand that now particularly the National Board of Accreditation, NABH, requires that such list of subject experts, this can be from within or outside the institutes, but it should, all of those, we should have their CVs with qualification, affiliation, etc. Put on file. They have to be previously approved. So you just can't call people out for this meeting. It is preferable to have all those listed out appropriately and invite them only when it is required for specified purposes. Needless to say, they do not have voting rights. They can give opinions, but they can't conclusively talk about rejection or acceptance of this. Then membership rules, generally the tenure is for 3 years, and the roles of responsibility should be clearly defined in a standard operative procedure manual, which has to be retained here and a copy to be handed over to them. As I did mention that regular training should be done. So again, NABH and NDCT are in tune as far as this is concerned. The conflict of interest, again, here gets appropriately defined. So what NABH requires is a very clear set of disclosure statement, which talks about financial and non-financial disclosure in a checklist-based manner, so that every member does this in a very, does the review in a very impartial manner. So I think that's where I'm going to stop. The important point I would like to stress while closing is that a lot of responsibility now has come on the ethics committees. For your attention.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a very enlightening talk. I think Dr. Boramani is about to say something.
I think I'll say at the end. Finish your talk. Yeah, it was excellent talk by Dr. Sanjay sir. Lot of new things to, at least for me.
Yeah. So there was a lot of there were a lot of issues that were there, which have actually been clarified, and it was the Drug and Cosmetic Act changes which had actually made people a little wary of participating.
Yeah.
So our next speaker is Dr. Jatinder Bali. He will.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. I think if you can permit me to share screen.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Well, good evening, ladies. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jatinder Bali, and at the outset, I want to thank the ISMSICS for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about the National Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical and Health Research involving human participants. I will be mainly focusing on the 2017 iteration of it, because 2019 is a smaller document, and we will cover it in the passing. Now, the first question, I think I'm stuck. I have no financial disclosures to make in this particular presentation, apart from the fact that I'm the author of a book on the subject, which was written for doctors, but is now actually being used by paramedics, and it's the standard reference text for paramedics in about 6 universities across India. Now, the first question that comes to mind is, why are we talking about importance of medical ethics in scientific research. You see, the COVID pandemic has underlined the need for international cooperation. In days to come, no single institution or even country for that matter would have, the skill sets to address all the research questions with alacrity and speed that is required for the human race. So this particular platform was designed to be a multi-ethnic, multidisciplinary, multi-centric international collaboration platform by ISMSICS, and therefore we need to be aware of the situation in our country, how it has changed over the years, and also be aware of how it is across different parts of the world, because it's slightly different. Basic tenets still remain the same. Why did we pick up the ICMR guidelines? The ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research, is located in New Delhi. It is the apex body in India for formulating, coordinating, and promoting biomedical research, and is one of the oldest medical research bodies in the world, having been formed way back in 1911 as the Indian Research Fund Association. It has been a pioneer of sorts as far as, the Indian Journal of Medical Research dates back to 1913, and it started a biomedical research fellowship even before independence. And IRFA became the Indian Council of Medical Research in 1949. Now, it has given us a slew of guidelines on different topics, including bioethics, and that has been published, as Dr. Mahendale has pointed out, in 1980, in 2000, in 2006. And what we are going to be looking at is the 2017 iteration of it, which was formulated and formalized as the NDCT, the New Drug and Clinical Trial Rules of 2019. In 2020, there has been an update in keeping with the COVID pandemic. Now, this document is about 180, 190 pages long, and is divided into 12 sections, starting with, the statement of general principles, and then goes on to specific conditions. General ethical issues, Dr. Pamela has already very well elucidated. Dr. Mahendale has already talked of the review procedures, the informed consent process, and then the document goes on to vulnerability, what is to be done for vulnerable populations, the biological materials, the biobanking, the data sets, and the research during humanitarian emergencies and disasters. Now, when we talk of the principles, it has already been covered up. It is up to us to, probably talk of 6 principles, 10 principles, or basically all of them are derived from, they start from the Nuremberg Code, come to the Helsinki Declaration, the World Medical Association declarations, and all of them are basically looking at voluntary participation, non-exploitative research conducted by professionally competent people who minimize the risk the patient or the person, the participant is exposed to, so that we are able to maximize the benefits. And there is total responsibility in a transparent and accountable manner, and institutions are there to back up this for treatment in case of adverse effects or if anything else is required. Yes, the basic principle still remains. Patient autonomy is, if he is capable of taking a decision, it is his body. We should respect that decision. Our actions should bring benefit to the patients. That's the principle of beneficence, or at least they should do no harm. That's the principle of non-maleficence. And we should intervene only with as much of an intervention that is required to answer the question, and our actions, the benefits should be proportionate to the risk. The risk should not be disproportionate, and it should be carried out in people who are going to be consumers of that research. So that is the basis of that social justice criteria that we had talked of. And then, of course, the document goes on to categorize different categories of risk, and institutional ethics committees, independent ethics committees, how they are to be constituted, who should be the members, that Dr. Mahendale has very well covered, and there's nobody better than him to be talking about this. Then they also talk of the quorum for the meetings. Basically, all categories of people should be available, and if the quorum is not complete, then the decision made in such a meeting is not valid. The requirements for EC members broadly is that they should be trained, they should be competent, they should be willing to give time, willing to declare their conflict of interest, be willing to sign the confidentiality clauses, the agreements, and place their full name, profession, affiliation in the public domain. And more than anything else, they should be understanding the research, the need for the research, and imparting protection to the participants. Now, once the committee has been constituted, it is supposed to maintain its records, which are, two types of papers: the administrative records and the protocol related records. And then it is supposed to look at every protocol using a certain set of criteria, which should look at the design of the study, the risk benefit assessment, how the study population is selected, how it is recruited, what are the protections which are available in terms of privacy and confidentiality, whether the researchers are trained and competent, whether they have any conflicts of interest, and in case, how are the adverse effects and serious adverse effects going to be managed. The compensation, if required, has to be worked out, and there is a procedure for that. And most importantly, it looks at the informed consent process when it is giving the approvals. As Dr. Mahendale has pointed out, once the approval has been given, that is not the end of the story. The review is periodically continued, whether it comes from the Data Safety Monitoring Board or it comes from the principal investigators. So there is a continuing review and monitoring, which may be a routine monitoring at periodic intervals, or if some variations or deviations are observed, then these are the causes for which a for-cause monitoring can be specially ordered. Now, these are the documents which they need to maintain in the committee: the appointment letters, the agreements, the CVs, the financial records, the accreditation documents, the meeting, the agenda, the meeting related documents, the agenda, the minutes, and communications along with the standard operating procedures. In terms of proposal related documents, all decisions that have been taken, any adverse effect reports, any progress reports, the correspondence that they have done, they should all be maintained. And finally, the final report should be filed. Now, once the proposal is received, the committee can give either an exempt review or an expedited review or a full committee review. There are different criteria for it. And once the review is complete, the decisions that can come from the committee may be either the study is approved with or without suggestions, or it is sent back to you for minor revisions or for major modifications and resubmission, in which case it is going to go back to a full committee for an approval. Or it may be not approved, giving reasons why it is not approved, and it can also be a revocation or a termination of an approval which had already been given for reasons which are listed subsequently. The documents then, of course, they are supposed to look at the informed consent process and whether or not waivers are possible or required, and then how the vulnerable populations should be dealt with. There is again a role of the ethics committees there. And then, of course, there are those advanced things about biobanks and data sets and anonymization and pseudo-anonymization, which has been covered. And interestingly, even before the pandemic had struck, this was in the 2019 iteration that the council had talked of research during humanitarian emergencies and disasters, and it offered measures like virtual or teleconferences if face-to-face meetings are not possible, and in situations where local ECs are not available because of an emergency, then it permitted, an ethics review to be conducted by another recognized EC within India. I don't know whether it was premonition or it was foresight, but I really, I tip my hat to the Indian Council of Medical Research. And of course, that brings me to the end of the presentation. My task was made so much easier by my previous speakers. The subsequent iteration of 2020 is about 17 pages long, and it we actually did not focus on it because the 2019 regulations were notified as the rules in 2019 in I think March 2019, and of course there are things that come out of it, and we can probably discuss them as we go along. Thank you so much.
So we have few minutes for discussion.
I think we can set the ball rolling. The link that they've sent me says that there are there is some sort of a technical glitch there.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
waiting for them to come up. In the meantime, we can carry on with the discussion. I think Dr. Boramani was about to say something when I butted in.
Yeah,
the
no, I just want to announce that it was a very lucid presentation by all the speakers. Generally, this type of topic is less attended in all conferences, but this is a very vital topic. And I want to inform the audience that ISMSICS itself has started its own journal. Already 2 issues are out, and it's a peer-reviewed journal called the Global Journal of Cataract Surgery and Research in Ophthalmology, under the leadership of Dr. Barun Naik and Dr. Jatinder Bali. Dr. Purvi Bhagat is the managing editor. So I request everyone to contribute to this journal, and I'm also glad to announce that the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology is coming out with a special issue jointly with ISMSICS, which is a SICS specific issue, which is coming out very soon. And we are having our Biennial World Conference, next Biennial World Conference, jointly with PGI Chandigarh in Chandigarh on from 4th to 6th of November. So I request everyone to register for this conference. So many new concepts in SICS as well as so many techniques of advanced SICS will be introduced in this conference. The website, you can visit the conference website, which is www.ccc2022.in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's we're actually looking forward to meeting everybody at Chandigarh. And actually, we are really happy to have Dr. Mahendale and Dr. Gonzalez here.
Yeah,
she's very lucidly pointed out, the internationally accepted principles. And if we go back to our original learning, it used to be those 4 pillars, and then it started multiplying. So
in research methodology, we by SWAM, we are listening to Dr. Sanjay's lecture there. So we listened there, sir.
No, just wanted to give one more piece of information. While I was director of National Institute of Epidemiology, this particular course on research methodology was rolled out, and I'm glad to share with all of you that Medical Council has made it now mandatory for all the students who are entering the postgraduate diploma or degree course. So that's one. And one of the latest ones, which has also been rolled out, which I had initiated before I retired from that institute, or rather moved from that institute to Delhi, was a course on bioethics for ethics committee members. So that is already also now being given. So that again,
sir, I have a question. So that course is now that's the same course that HISTI had, the Translational Health Science Institute, or is it an NIE course which is now?
No, it is a NIE course which has been developed jointly with WHO, and so it is given by NIE. It is available on NIE. The information is available on NIE website.
And how do we enroll for it, sir?
There is a cycle. Probably once a year or twice a year they give it. Research methodology, I know for sure it is twice a year. I'm not so sure, about ethics course. But there is a cycle when it is announced, and it has to be, we have to just register it, and it's a free course primarily.
So we have to register under SWAM, and they keep you sending mails.
Yeah, correct.
Mails.
I had the privilege of doing that course.
Yes, I have also done that.
Yeah,
I had registered, but I didn't go any further than that. So, because actually we're coming up, we were planning to register the ethics committees, and we just wanted, earlier it was HISTI which used to organize the courses in Delhi at least, and it was much easier. So if it is online, I think it makes it so much more easier. And having eminent people like you, it would be, it would be a step in the right direction to make it more available and probably increase the number of cycles. Dr. Gonzalez, how is it in Mexico?
In Mexico, as our speakers currently stated, even though they are like international regulations, every country has a specific regulation for publishing and for their ethics research committees. So most of the time you need to run your job through the ethics research committee. And since 2013, it is almost 10 years now, it is by law that every health institution, private or governmental, must have their own research committee. So I think that has helped a lot in our country during the past 10 years, because there's been a lot of exposure to bioethics. There are a lot of different things going on. And now there is a National Bioethics Commission who is in charge of regulating all this. But that also sent us like a high standard, because we were not involved. I participated in a private institution, so we knew about this, but 10 years ago, we had by law to have our own committee. So a lot of us started to get like involved in this kind of issue, but at the end was really, really good, because it has helped us like to have a better understanding ourselves, but also to spread this knowledge. Because as Dr. Sanjira, I really loved your last slide with some faces like this. Whenever you talk about bioethics, or at least here in Mexico, whenever you talk about research committees, I mean, the residents, the researchers, and everybody put like this face, like, oh my God. So that's our job. Our job is to make it like affordable, like, or to have a friendly face for everybody.
Dr. Pamela, your presentation was brilliant, if I may say. And Dr. Sanjay, I learned a lot. Dr. Barun, we are so used to listening and learning, but what Dr. Sanjay said, so many things I didn't know actually. I myself didn't know. So there's been a lot of learning, and I expected that to happen.
Actually, Dr. Sanjay was brought on board by Dr. Naik. Dr. Naik always plans, any program to the letter T. Like all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have Dr. Mehendale. And then once we had Dr. Mehendale, I said, why not have him speak alone? But then we'd already, rolled out this thing.
I would like to suggest or request Dr. Barun to react to one situation which is coming up in hospitals a lot of times now. See, many of the doctors, they do their own work, and as a part of their clinical care, they collect a lot of data, and then they prepare manuscripts based on that and send it for publications. And then the editors like Dr. Barun, they send those back asking for ethics committee approvals, which these people have not taken. So I suppose you should give guidance to people as to how they should prepare their manuscripts based on the data that they have collected as a part of their care, patient care, but which were not conceived as research projects earlier.
Thank you, sir, for asking, but there is no clear-cut answer to this, because what happens, the all peer-reviewed journals now, they are supposed to have in their articles, because even the all indexed journals, the indexing requirement or the indexing requirement is that their articles, all articles, material and method section should include that ethics committee approval have been taken. Now the problem is that with the ethics committee approval, as you rightly said, many doctors just collect data and then analyze, and they just want to publish. But unfortunately, whenever we get this, now even my secretary is trained. So before even pointing out to me, or I have to point it out, she herself sends it back to the author that please mention whether it was taken or not, whether ethics committee approval, but invariably I know whether definitely we don't investigate further or don't ask for any other evidence. But when we ask, they always say the permission was taken. But sometimes, like I remember some instances, one instance very clearly, because so many times I thought, I don't know which ethics committee has given approval like this kind of research. So then I asked that, okay, please tell me, and the doctor was insisting, the author was insisting. So then I said, okay, please send me the name of the ethics committee, and please also send a copy of the approval letter of this research. Then after that, the authors remained quiet and nothing happened. So I also didn't pursue any further, because we don't have any means to pursue further, or even if we would have detected, we could not have done anything else. So
Yeah.
that is a major problem. That is a major problem. But like say courses like this, today's webinar, because at least the seriousness of this subject people will understand, because they think ethics is nothing, or ethics, if I say that I have followed ethics, but whether we follow or don't follow, it doesn't matter much. But at least now awareness is being generated, and so I'm sure it will improve, it will change. And I don't know what is your impression and what is your take on this question, whatever you yourself posed.
See,
Can I put in a line before we have the final answer from Dr. Sanjay? So what I figured out that primary module, primary quiz kind of thing is first subjected to people. So once they go through that and they are primed about it, and then they realize they fail in that quiz or something, then they read the whole thing, and then the module training starts. This is what happened with us in UOL. So most of us would actually fail, to be truthful, not putting on record, fail with the quiz that they were so much in depth. So do you get that feeling of you have to learn more, you don't know everything about it? I think we could start like that.
Yeah, that need assessment module that you have, and that makes you realize that there is a felt need, that creates that felt need there. Dr. Sanjay?
Yeah. Just wanted to react to Dr. Barun's question or remark further. Sir, we handle it in two ways in our own institution here. Sometimes we get say requests from our own consultants saying that they have already sent such papers for publications, and then they have come back from the editors asking for the ethics committee approvals. And very realistically, we tell them we cannot give you approvals that this particular project, because you never submitted that as a project to us. There is no record of that that we have in our say in our computers, in our systems, etc. So what we will do is, what we can just do is, in the next committee, we will put this as an item where we say whether, and there we will submit your publication which you have submitted to the journal. We will submit it to the ethics committee and ask the ethics committee whether or not you support this publication or not. We will be silent about the research study, because indeed we haven't seen this. And so the ethics committee, if it says it is okay to publish that paper, we just give a certificate saying that we are okay with this particular publication based on the hospital collected data. But now the same person, I suggest then, as a member secretary of the hospital committee, that if you want to develop any kind of a manuscript in future now, what you can do is you can submit a proposal to us for a retrospective case records based analysis. Develop a regular project proposal for that, get an approval for that, and then prepare a manuscript, so that at least for such a retrospectively collected data based analysis paper, we can give you a proper approval for the study. So we handle it this way.
Sir, I have another question which emanates from the notification of 2019. We've gone and agreed to something called the academic clinical trial, which in effect says that new drug, new route, new indication theoretically warrants a clinical trial, but it says that for academic clinical trials, now every trial at the outset is an academic trial. So this differentiation into academic and another kind of clinical trial, I don't know how and why we permitted it, and how it managed to, because it's not there in the main guidelines, it finds its way in the draft rules. in the notification.
Okay, I try to give you my own perspective on this particular thing. The differentiation which the NDCT 2019 has made on this very clearly states that all such products which are being tested, which are not being requested for licensure here. Say there is a new product which is being tried by a different route. An old product which is being tried for a new indication or by a new route or for a different combination, etc. This can be tried under academic trials. But it will not be sufficient evidence to give licensure for that. That's the differentiation between an academic trial and a regular trial. If you want a licensure based on this particular trial, it should go as a regular trial, RCT, as it goes to the Drug Controller General of India. So that's the primarily what happens is normally, say, for example, in our hospital, the anesthetists, they have two or three different anesthetic agents now. What they have decided is, so we will do a clinical trial for induction and just see drug A versus drug B, the time required for induction. And the third arm will be drug A followed by drug B. So they are combining this now, which was not done earlier. And the fourth one was drug B followed by drug A. So both these drugs A and B are marketed, available, being normally used for anesthesia. But what they are trying to do is combining them in a new way. So this becomes an academic trial. So they submit it either as a faculty project or as a student's project.
So this is exactly what I'm trying to point out, sir. So this looks like a loophole, specially created.
Yeah,
it is very unfortunate because this was exactly what had happened in Bhopal. This was what we were trying to, by what that shift in 2011 onwards was to cover up these things, was to cover up, these issues. And, somehow, somewhere because this only for these indications would a clinical trial be warranted. So why can't these people also go in and register as what do they have to do? They just have to register with the CTRA, one extra mandatory approval. That's also
right.
Probably, we made a mistake. I was just looking at your
I agree with you. There is still some kind of a gray zone here, and what they have now therefore clarified is they have thrown this particular matter in the hands of ethics committee. So if ethics committee is not able to clearly decide whether it is a let's say regulatory trial or a academic trial, then they should refer this particular matter to Drug Controller General of India and then get a guidance on this. That is what they have said.
So that's what I'm saying. You see, what it says is you refer it to the DCGI, and if you don't get any answer in 30 days, that's a deemed approval. Few institutions which would be doing this.
Dr. Pamela,
there are thousands of researchers. Yes, ma'am. There would be thousands of researchers across India who would like to use these.
Yeah, agreed.
I just have a comment in what you're saying is that, as you said, the Ethics Research Committee is not a regulatory institution, or at least not here in Mexico, because it doesn't have like a specific figure. It gives recommendations. So this approval or not approval, it is not mandatory. It depends on the researcher. It depends on the institution where they're doing their research. The thing is, it kind of doesn't make sense at all, because the institution, and whenever you want to publish, they ask for the research committee approval, but at the end of the day, it's not a regulatory or law-based approval. It is just a recommendation. So even though there's the ethics research committee figure right now, it doesn't have like the backup of the law right now, at least here in Mexico. You need the recommendation, you need the letter of approval, but at the end of the day, depends on the researcher, depends on the institution. But if you want to publish this or make it like in a big governmental institution, you do need the letter. So, it's kind of ambivalent, this kind of saying. It says like, okay, we're endorsing the research committees, but actually we're not giving them the backup of the regulatory law or standard. So that's kind of the way it is in here.
No, we are the same, madam. We are also in India, the ethics committees are not regulatory bodies, but their approvals are their approvals are essential to start the study. But there is a separate regulatory body, which gives the approval to start the studies also. So what normally happens is ethics committees give approval, which is a conditional approval based on the regulatory approval. So if the Drug Controller General of India provides the approval, only then the ethics committee gives the final approval. Without that, the ethics committee will not give, if we are talking about the drug trials in particular.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, let's answer it that way. There are like the trials are required in case we're going in, 2 or 3 things only: new drug, new indication, new dosage form. Then we need to go in through the clinical trial route. For anything else, we need to go in through the ethics committees. And even for the clinical trials, the ethics committee's approval is required for the CTRI registration. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
Dr.
fine.
Sanjay.
This is fine. This is correct.
So actually what had happened was we had something called the Drug and Cosmetics Act, which had, one section because of which the ethics committees became mandatory in India. And then, there was that gray zone which was there, which, all the people working in the ethics committees started feeling that pressure because of that gray zone. And the ICMR stepped in. It did human service. It stepped in a little late, I'd say, but it stepped in very well. And now, of course, we are a country which, which debates a lot. We are scientists from the very beginning. We have Tark Vitark. We have, we debated everything from times immemorial. So we are skeptics to the core. And that's exactly what we're doing here today also. Dr. Naik, sir.
Dr. Bali,
Ma'am, Dr.
I
Geeta.
stand corrected, but 30 days is not the criteria for DCGI. Because we have had, till we get a letter, the person can start, but till we get a letter, it is not approved.
Okay. Ma'am, for the academic trial?
Yeah, for yes.
Ma'am, I'll check that out because I've just seen I'm talking about the draft.
Issues with our postgraduate researchers. It doesn't work like that. We need our committee will not clear it finally.
Okay, like that means if you've referred it, you don't clear it.
If we don't get a letter, does not mean an approval. It's not a, if in 30 days, if we didn't get a letter and the approval is taken for granted, no.
Ma'am, in the academic clinical trial, what they say is the ethics committee writes a letter to DCGI. And if the DCGI has any objections, it has to raise it within 30 days. Otherwise, the ethics committee can go ahead with the approval. Please correct me, sir, Dr. Sanjay.
No, that's my understanding as well.
Even my understanding.
Yeah, that's correct.
You people are doing you're doing a fantastic job if you are actually waiting for a clearance or something.
We are very scared of the whole thing, maybe, so we don't take a chance.
No. See, we have so much to learn from you. See, these are all things that we are learning as they say on the job. The ICMR has done a fantastic job in tabulating so many things from the Helsinki Declaration, the Nuremberg Code, the World Medical Association recommendations. And yes, there is a bit of dichotomy, but then that is to be expected, when you have something as complex as what is going on. And as science progresses, we are going to have more and more discussions and debates because, all said and done, there will be newer challenges that will be thrown at like ethical challenges that will be thrown by newer technologies which are coming in.
So one thing,
Yes.
I'm Dr. Naik, that probably we are little digressing from in the discussion from the main topic. The main topic was today about the ethics committee and the ethics understanding. But what I have to make one comment that because most of the time in India, what we feel that ethics committee constitution, the means when you want to constitute, any institution wants to constitute ethics committee, they take it very lightly. And what Dr. Sanjay Mendle has given this presentation today, with this, it's really means it's not an easy task. Even as he said, that if the training of those ethics committee members, if they fail to do that, then they are debarred from being member of the committee. But sometimes even because I know some of my friends who say that, yes, this ethics committee, I have applied my research for this ethics committee, and we were just drinking tea outside, tea and coffee. And after half an hour, they came and said, yes, your project is approved. So this kind of approval, because of course, I know for drug trial and other things, it's entirely different thing. Seriousness has to be there more. But even in research also, seriousness has to be there. So with this, it means it's probably just, according to me, the importance of ethics committee and their role, so they don't understand properly.
True, sir.
And this is the general feeling, because means probably most of the institutions, they feel, most institution, when they constitute this, and especially the private ones, they think it's a very easy thing, and they just simply constitute ethics committee and start giving approval to all kinds of research. I don't know, this is my observation. If anyone else has some
so I think Dr. Sanjay's presentation was very lucid insofar as it says, the continuing monitoring. It's not that, it ends at the day it has given an approval. It continues for the duration of the project that is taking place within the confines of that ethics committee, and it should monitor it also. Unfortunately, we have not actually, we've not given it that much thought, and we are not, unfortunately, people have not taken those aspects seriously enough, because it is a time consuming job. It is a laborious job. If you look at all the proposals, if you look at all the data that comes in for midterm and for periodic review, so it is a taxing job.
I think what would you say, many people just consider that it is not important, or it is just a ritual that we have to do it. So that kind of feeling means we have to train people that no, this is not that. That is not the purpose of this committee.
So these days, the Swayam, the research methodology course, the MBBS students, they have to do it. So now they are sensitized at a very early stage. So maybe in future we will have students or mentors who will be more like in research methodology and taking interest in that.
Yes, I remember that, because now at least there are many courses which are available, because now, but in 2005 when I started, and so that time there was hardly any course, because I remember in my courses, the doctors from even the professors and lecturers from AIMS Delhi used to come and attend those courses.
Yes,
so later on, and that I had forgotten also about many, but sometimes they say, "Arey sir, humne aapka course attend kiya tha." So that kind of thing. So that time it was a rarity.
Yes,
and it was just, I thought that it's not that I was very much interested and I have done any course on this, but out of just interest, you can say, means on the job, got some training. And then I thought, why not make it simple and try to at least sensitize them so that they develop interest. And once they develop interest, because if you just do a course of even 1 day, 2 days or 3 days, you cannot cover every aspect in that in detail so that they can become expert. But at least if the interest is generated and if they get sensitized, probably my job, I thought my job is to do that. And if that is done, then it's fulfilled.
So you did it beautifully. You did it beautifully. There was a whole generation of researchers which came out of it. And I remember one World Congress, I think it was in Abu Dhabi, I think 2010 or 2012. And I had one of the foreign delegates who had attended Sir's course, and my slides were going downwards and his slides went this way. So he tells me, no, it is not like this. It is like this. I said, wait, after 5 or 7 minutes, I could make out that it is. Then I took out Sir's slide. I said, okay, you agree with this? He says, yes, this is what I've learned. I have attended this course. And then, I showed him, I said, this slide is read this way and you read the slide downwards. He says, okay, now I agree. But in that process, he'd wasted, 5 or 10 minutes of my time. And when I left that hall, hardly 5 minutes later, I met sir. And I told him, sir, you have to give me permission to use your slides because they were so popular at that moment in time, from 2005 to I think 2013-14. They were really popular.
So we always look up to him for improve our publications, how to publish.
And Dr. Gonzalez has given us, a very good lowdown on how it is in Mexico. And, we'd love to have you on board subsequently also, ma'am. And I want to thank Dr. Mahendale for sparing time for us. And so we will be troubling you again.
No problem. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta, for a beautiful presentation. And I want to thank Dr. Naik for, always being the person in Indian research methods. And he's handheld so many people. Kaan pakad ke inhone sikhaya sabko. Thank you so much, sir.
His words mean a lot, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's brutally honest. That is something that we've learned from him. Like, there's nothing. It's that honesty comes from inside, and if we have people like him as role models, you tend to imbibe honesty yourself.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Bali. Thank you.
Thank you for this lovely, really, it's so soothing to my ears that I can't believe it. I can't believe it. But
नहीं sir, मैं तो मतलब
Me too, sir.
Integrity, because you see, we remember that Peter Daszak episode that happened, and when the discussion started, I suddenly started remembering of the things that you used to say. So obviously Lancet took a lot of flack for that, but we in India equated it to your utterings and all. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rajvinder, for doing it so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajvinder. It would not have been possible without you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you so much for the kind invitation.
Ma'am, we'll be troubling you again.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Good night and good morning, wherever we are in the world.
Yes. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
So with your permission, can we finish the meeting?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Kushagra.
Good night.
Thank you, Kushagra. Thank you, Rajvinder.
Thank you, sir.